Hey everybody, and welcome back to the board meeting. Today we're doing another episode of Buy, Borrow, or Banish. I did a video of doing this last week, and I asked people if they wanted to see more of these kind of videos, and a lot of people said they did. So I was like, hey, this is a fun video to make, and if you guys enjoy it, that's all the better. And what we're doing here is I get a trio of games, 3 games, and I have to choose to buy one of them, borrow one of them, and banish one of them. I got to do one thing with all 3 of these games. And only one for each choice, obviously. And this kind of started with this one board game related Facebook group that I'm part of. Everybody kept posting these things of buy, banish, or buy, borrow, or banish, and they'd pick these 3 games, and everybody would comment on them. So I went through all of these different lists that people were putting out there, and I picked 11 last week. Then I went through and I picked out 11 more again this week. And so let's just get started with our first set of games. We got 11 of them to go through. And the first one is Blood Rage, Inish, and Scythe. And when I seen these, I'm like, oh, big sprawling games. That's what connects them. Then I was thinking about it, and what really connects these games is they're these big miniature games that people think are like battle centric, but they're really not, because really not focusing on the battle a lot of times with these games. Like Blood Rage, you might want to lose some battles because you've got cards. The main thing to me in Blood Rage is drafting. Scythe, you're kind of just using your resources, trying to move out and be as fiscal as possible, be as resourceful. And Inish, you don't want to kill everybody on the map because you need other people on the map to score points in the way that you need to. So I thought those were 3 interesting games to pick through. I'm going to banish Inish right away. It's my least favorite but it's also the one that I've played the least amount. I would like to play it a couple more times, but there's no way I'm going to banish Scythe or Blood Rage because I love those games. So I will buy Scythe, borrow Blood Rage, and banish Inish. All 3 really good games, in my opinion. Let's go to the next set of games. We have a bunch of drafting games. We have It's a Wonderful World, Hadara, and Bunny Kingdom. 3 games that I adore. They're wonderful games. Bunny Kingdom is so cute, but it's actually, you got a lot of choices when you're drafting. Hadara's kind of a 7 Wonders killer to some people. I think you can have both in your collection, but Hadara's a lot more, it's a very pretty game to me, very colorful. It's a Wonderful World has become my most played game in my game group lately, in the last couple months actually. So, out of these 3, I'm going to buy It's a Wonderful World because there's no way I'm not keeping that in my collection. I'm going to borrow Hadara and banish Bunny Kingdom. And that one hurts because I like Bunny Kingdom a lot. Let's go to our third set of games. We have Funkoverse, Unmatched, and Marvel Champions. And what connects these 3 games is all 3 of these games, you pick this identity to play as. And your game is very different from other people's games because you'll get special abilities and powers from them. Like Unmatched, you have your own deck of cards. Marvel Champions, you pick a deck, a hero, and their deck is their whole thing. And Funkoverse, you have the special abilities and powers and everything like that. And this one's kind of an easy one for me to make. I'm going to buy Unmatched, borrow Marvel Champions, and banish Funkoverse. Funkoverse is like an okay game to me. I think there's some interesting mechanics in it, but it's not one that I break out. Like I think I've played Funkoverse like 3 times only. It's not, if someone asks me to play it, I'll play it, but the other 2 games are absolutely great. And Unmatched I don't dislike anything about Unmatched. I can't stress enough how much I actually like Unmatched. And it keeps coming to the table, and I keep liking it more and more. Let's go to number 4. Number 4 is a bunch of Viking-themed worker placement games. We have A Feast for Odin, Champions of Midgard, and Raiders of the North Sea. And these are 3 more games that I like. There's not one here that I don't dislike. Or even, I think these are all good to great games. Feast for Odin, I think that's too big to buy for me. I'll just, so I will buy Champions of Midgard, borrow a Feast for Odin, make someone else buy it and bring it to game night and have them learn all the stuff, and then I'll banish Raiders of the North Sea, which I like Raiders of the North Sea. I really like the mechanic of placing a worker out, taking that action, taking another worker back, and taking that action as well. I think it's really interesting, and it works really well. Going to number 5. Number 5 is a category of games that I actually don't really like very much, and that's social deduction games. But there's 3 of them here. We got the Resistance Avalon, Secret Hitler, and Werewolf. Resistance Avalon is just like a retheme of the Resistance. Out of the 3, Avalon is for sure my favorite. I like the theme of, it's like a King Arthur theme, medieval theme, which I enjoy. And I'll borrow Werewolf and banish Secret Hitler. Even though like Werewolf and Secret Hitler, I'd be fine if I never played either of those games again. We actually play Secret Hitler quite a bit in my game group because a bunch of people like that one. That's their favorite social deduction game, and I'm like, yeah, it's fine to me. But let's go to the next one. The next ones are a bunch of light to medium weight worker or cooperative games. And that's kind of my sweet spot for cooperative games. For some reason, I really like those games that are kind of in between light and medium. We got Horrified, Wonder Woman Challenge of the Amazons, and Back to the Future Back in Time. Straight off the bat, I will buy Horrified. It's one of my favorite cooperative games. And the other 2 I really like as well. They're just not as high up on that list for me. And they kind of both sit in the same spot for me, where I think they're good, not amazing. And I wish Wonder Woman, if they would have gotten some more expansions, or even one expansion for it, it probably would bump that up. I don't think that's going to happen. But Wonder Woman Challenge of the Amazons got like these scenarios that you can play against certain villains. And they got 3 villains. And then, once I played all 3 villains and played them like a couple times each, I was like, okay, I would like an expansion for this now. I don't think it's ever going to happen. And that's just a rant for me for the Challenge of the Amazon. But I will buy Horrified, and I would borrow Back to the Future Back in Time, and I'll banish Wonder Woman Challenge of the Amazon. And like I said, if Wonder Woman got an expansion, it would definitely push that up above Back to the Future for me. Going to the 7th set of games, we have Gloomhaven, Pandemic Season 1, and Brass Birmingham. And I really had to think of like, why are these games put together in this? But then I was like, wait a second. And I went on Board Game Geek, and these are the top 3 board games ranked of all time. With Gloomhaven being number 1, Pandemic Season 1 being number 2, Brass Birmingham number 3. But Pandemic Season 1 is a legacy game. Why would you borrow a legacy game in my head? I was like, no. And I've already played it once, so even though I really like it, I loved it actually. I have no like want to go back and play Season 1 again. Even though maybe I will eventually, but we played through it once, I'm good on it. So I'll banish Pandemic Season 1, Legacy Season 1. And I'll buy Gloomhaven and borrow Brass Birmingham. Even though Brass Birmingham is my least favorite of these 3, it's a good game. But to me, every time I play Brass, I have to relearn everything, and I'm like, God, I don't play it enough to like it, or to revisiting the rules is kind of a pain every time we go back to it. Going to our 8th set of games, we have a bunch of Rising games. We have Thanos Rising, Atlantis Rising, and Red Rising. And actually, there's a Rising series with Thanos Rising, then they got like the SpongeBob SquarePants Rising, and there's a Harry Potter themed Rising game, or there's a Star Wars themed one as well. But all of these games aren't connected at all. So, but Atlantis Rising was one of my favorite. I just did my top 10 cooperative games of all time. Atlantis Rising was very high on that list. And so is Thanos Rising, actually. So these games I really like. I will buy Atlantis Rising, borrow Thanos Rising, and I will banish Red Rising. Even though I like Red Rising. Red Rising's gotten some hate online. People didn't like it. But it's basically, there's a Fantasy Realms game. And Jamie Stegmaier from Stonemaier took that game mechanic and put it into this Red Rising. I like Red Rising a lot because I like that mechanic, plus I like the theme. Red Rising is based on this book series, one of my favorite book series of all time, actually. And I think that's why I like Red Rising so much. Even though I'm banishing the game, but I can still play Fantasy Realms. So, alright, going to number 9, we got a bunch of dice chuckers here. We have Arcadia Quest, this giant big box game. We got Dice Throne, a 2-player dice chucking game, trying to kill the other player. And we have King of Tokyo, which is a dice chucking game, but you've got a bunch of players and trying to be the last monster standing or the first one to get 20 points. But it's funner to kill everybody rather than get the 20 points. I'll banish Dice Throne straight off the bat. A lot of people like Dice Throne a lot, and I think it's a decent game. I don't think it's amazing. I don't think it's bad. It's just kind of right in the middle to me. But I like the production of Dice Throne. One of the best productions of any games I've ever played, actually. But I will buy King of Tokyo, borrow Arcadia Quest, and banish Dice Throne. King of Tokyo, my son would be mad if I ever didn't have King of Tokyo, I think, because it's one of his favorite games. It's one of my favorite games to play with him. Let's go to our 10th set of games. We have a bunch of very simple games here. We have Point Salad, Sushi Go, and Silver and Gold. And all of them are very simple games that you can explain in a matter of a minute. I'm going to buy Sushi Go right off the bat. It's an older game, but it stayed relevant to me, which is hard for these small, simple filler games to stay relevant. Sushi Go is an older game, and I still like to pull it out and play it. It's a set collecting, drafting game. Very simple. I like it a lot. Point Salad and Silver and Gold. These are 2 games that I've played a bunch of in the last 2 years. In fact, all of these games, I've played all of these probably over 50 times each. That's how much I've played all of these games. But Point Salad and Silver Gold have started to dwindle for me, just because I've played them so much. I highly recommend both of them. But which one? I'll buy Sushi Go, and I will borrow Silver and Gold, and I'll banish Point Salad. But Silver and Gold and Point Salad both kind of sit in the same spot for me. But you gotta pick one. So going to our very last comparison of these 3 games, we have a bunch of solo games. And they're simple, small games. We have Sprawlopolis, Mr. Cabbagehead's Garden, and Orchard. And right off the bat, I will buy Sprawlopolis. I can't imagine me not getting rid of Sprawlopolis out of my collection. It's one that I play quite often. Orchard is a very simple game that I like to play late at night. So I will banish Mr. Cabbagehead's Garden. It's a very popular solo game. People talk about it quite a bit in the solo community. It was a game that I played. I'm like, yeah, it's good. And after a couple plays, I was like, yeah, I'm kind of done with it. And Orchard I still like to pull out and play, even though how simple it is, it's retained some replay value for me. So I'll buy Sprawlopolis, borrow Orchard, and I will banish Mr. Cabbagehead's Garden. And that is all 11 of our comparisons today of buy, borrow, or banish. Let me know in the comments below what you're picking for all of these sets of games, if you're going to buy them, borrow them, or banish them. Either way, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to like and subscribe to see more weekly content from me, Shane, at the board meeting in the future. I hope you all have an amazing day. Take care, everyone.